What is happening, world? Welcome to another edition of No Banana Peels. I'm your uniquely corny host, Dylan Masvidal, aka DYLANDOOM. Everyone, after I watched The Iron Claw this past weekend, when I stopped bawling my eyes out at that last 10 minutes of the movie, I realized it's time to talk about wrestling again. And what better guest to get on No Banana Peels to talk about said topic than the man we have here today. He is the leader of the Shuv It Squad. He is a TNA historian. And if you tell him otherwise, shut up or he'll slap you one. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Markyd123. Thank you very much, Markyd.
Hello, Dylan. I think you missed. I'm a well-known gut punching specialist as well.
And well, I was just about to get into that too, because you're a man of many catchphrases, many names, and also just, again, your verbiage when it comes to explaining wrestling and your knowledge of the sport. When it comes to how you are in terms of your commentary, it's such a unique aspect of your videos. And I mean, I know we're jumping right into this, but I mean, you brought up a great point there. It's just very unique, and you have sort of this affinity for creating catchphrases, puns, bits, or even rules in your videos as you're making them to just breathe life into a match or even a wrestler that no one really would think a second thought about. So, I have examples for you right here. You have, like, the sad, Jeff Hardy, he's sad that someone stole his Swanton bomb. Or your rules on the Samoan drop. Or my personal favorite, which many people agree with me, the cab driver slam. What is it about wrestling that you sort of feel like, all right, this match has something's going on here? Well, I mean, obviously, you love it as much as, just a hardcore fan, but then you decide to create something about it, and you love to use those, like, words. You're very big on diction. Has that always been with you since you were a child or since you began watching wrestling, or did you just pick up on that as you were making your videos?
Yeah, I've always been a bit weird. I've probably got mental illness. I grew up during the Attitude Era, so it was the era of catchphrases, and I believe wholeheartedly inconsistent catchphrases makes you a recognizable personality. Whereas some of these YouTubers, they don't really have a personality, and you could just watch one video and not remember them ever again because they didn't leave a lasting impression. I know I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I believe in trying to make some sort of impression. And therefore, when I watch a match, I like to try and find an angle that almost makes it memorable and interesting for everybody else, even if the match might not be that interesting. But it's about telling stories and personalities. That's what interests me the most about wrestling.
Can't agree more on that. And again, I just wanted to ask, when it comes to Wes Brisco, or my apologies, Wes Brisco, what is it with how did that, even though I know it's not necessarily like an equal sort of rivalry here, but when you were doing that video on Wes in TNA, was this just something that after a while you said, okay, this is the guy that I'm going to make the rival of my channel? Like, this is the guy I'm putting at the center. I cannot stand his matches. I don't know why he got a shot. Did that just happen? Did you know from the beginning, or was that just after he did the really bad crossbody as his finisher?
No, I can remember exactly what it was. At the time,
no disrespect to Wes, by
the
the
time
way.
He'd
Sorry.
just done that. Sorry. At the time, Wes Brisco had just done that promo where he called Hogan Hawk Hogan, and for some reason that was so funny to me, and I remembered it for the next few years. And at the same time, I was watching this YouTuber at the time who used to review TNA each week, and he was so miserable about the product. Every week, he'd just sit there and look like he wanted to die watching this show, but he was still watching it. And
yeah.
That resonated in my head. I've probably taken a lot of inspiration from him. He doesn't do it anymore, but shout out Fuller. If anyone ever wants to go back and watch some funny TNA stuff, his commentary is so depressing, and you'll probably see where I got some of my style from. But he also hated on Wes Brisco. Kind of elevated it even further in my head. It was already in my head. It elevated it further. And then I went back and watched the promo that he did on YouTube in like 2019, 2020, I think it was. And the top comment on that video is me from when it actually happened back in 2013,
Oh my God.
saying Hulk Hogan. And I was like, right, this has obviously been a big part of my life now. Potential character here, possibly. So
your influence just runs deep, you know.
Did something positive with his career.
Yeah, I mean, the Hulk Hogan, the Ace of Spades. I mean, the Aces and Eights turn with Garrett Bischoff as well. Just these things that, you know, ultimately you can't deny. Wes was an integral part of the TNA product, even if it was for a very short period of time. So, yeah. You can't take that away from him.
We will try, though, yeah.
Yeah, you will.
Try not to...
What was the name of the YouTuber you mentioned, actually?
I think it was Full Killer FK9 or something. If you just type in Full Killer TNA, he'll come up. But he doesn't use video clips or anything like that. It was very low budget. It was him miserably complaining about TNA each week. And it's almost like a brilliant catalogue of errors from that time. It's still good listening if you go back.
Fair. Wow, that's pretty cool. Definitely gonna check that out. And, I mean, it's great that we mentioned that because, I mean, it's no secret that your channel's inception begins with TNA. And you did what I believe is a beautiful video not too long ago about why you love TNA so much and why you continue to review it and put up with the product. And I would definitely encourage my viewers to please check that one out. But do you ever go back to these videos? I mean, not videos. These moments in TNA, whether good or bad. And I know you're so fascinated with the product, but are you ever worried about the nostalgic burden that comes with that? In the sense that you might go back to a rivalry you really enjoyed, and maybe you don't enjoy it as much as you used to. Or you might watch part of the product that really tainted your view on TNA and you regret having to experience it again, but you do it because you want, your fans to know just how miserable it was at that time being a TNA fan. Or the highs of it as well.
Love going back. I mean, I could jump into any random episode of TNA and have a good time watching it back. It was such a huge part of my life back then. But I find that some of the nostalgia is perhaps overblown in my head. For example, everyone's going to hate on me for this, but the Unbreakable Freeway, which is heralded as TNA's best match, I don't enjoy that as much going back to watch it for some reason. Whereas the Kurt Angle Mr. Anderson feud is still my favorite feud of all time, and I can go back and watch that anytime. And I reckon the reason for that is it's got a story. The Unbreakable one doesn't have as much of a story. It's more about the in-ring stuff.
Fair. I mean, honestly, while I think both of those matches are, 5 stars, thank you, Dave Meltzer, I know he didn't give the Angle one 5 stars. He should have. He hasn't given Angle 1 5-star match. Kind of highway robbery here. Just going to say that one.
Yeah.
I think what maybe, I don't know if maybe I'm most likely going to be wrong about this, but when it comes to that 3-way match, I think what might put you off or some other people off is that it is very similar to a lot of the indie style now. And if you look at it from that lens, you might already be put off. However, I try my best to look at it like this is like the best version of that style in a way where all the spots make sense to a degree, there's nothing overly like superhero-y, they're still selling, and just an incredible chemistry between Samoa Joe, Styles, and Daniels. But I completely understand that up against the really good storyline that Angle and Mr. Anderson built, yeah, I get it. And that steel cage match is fantastic. I mean, he did the perk salt.
And you've hit the nail on the head there. You've hit the nail on the head. If you watch the Unbreakable Freeway, you're comparing it to the current indie style, aren't you? And it doesn't seem quite as balls to the wall anymore.
Yeah.
But the Angle Anderson match, no one's topped that sort of storytelling, which is probably why it's still so good to me.
There you go. Got one right. Let's go. Hopefully I can continue that train going during this interview. Well, since we're talking about TNA and, you being, again, TNA historian, arguably their most valuable fan. Might be biased when I say that, though. What moment or match in TNA made you feel the highest of highs as a fan? And do you remember the specific match or moment that made you fall out of love with the company? So kind of a double whammy question there.
It's going to be a boring answer. The Nick Aldis AJ Styles match, and I love. It's nothing personal against Magnus. Like, the dude is a nice guy, and he helped me a lot in my early career. So, lovely bloke. Not a hating on him, but that match was horrible. I was really excited to see AJ Styles come back, because he'd done that thing where he'd taken the belt and been off TV for a while, going around the world or whatever, and he was now back just to lose in a horrible match, and then he was gone.
Yeah.
And after being so excited to see Styles come back, and then he was just taken away again. Yeah, I hate that match.
Fair. I wasn't watching at the time, but I'm sure that would have done it for me, or possibly Hulk Hogan getting rid of the 6-sided ring. That was pretty bad.
I didn't really care about that so much, probably because I was so in awe of all these new characters turning up every week. There was enough to keep my attention going. I wasn't too bothered about the ring overall.
Yeah, I think for me it's just the fact that when I look at that clip, like, it just sort of feels like such a like middle finger to the fans almost. Like, I see him go in there and then he says, we're doing 4 sides, brother. And then when everyone's complaining, he goes, you had 6 sides and it only got you so far. And I'm like, come on, what are you doing? You know, that's like the worst thing you can say to begin. I mean, unless he was trying to go for a heel Hogan, but they weren't doing that yet. So I think it was really just like a rally the troops kind of moment for the company. Hey, that we're doing new management, it's going to be great. And they fumbled it so bad, at least in my opinion, you know?
No, it was weird. I think when he first arrived in TNA, they couldn't decide if Hogan was going to be heel or face, because he would have cut a really random promo on Slapnuts, basically disregarding all his achievements and saying, you know, you're worthless in this company.
Yeah.
And it was storyline stuff, but it went further than that. And it was definitely heel territory, and the audience were all booing Hogan. And then the next week he was back to being cheered again. So it was a weird promo. So I don't know if they knew what they were doing at that moment.
Slapnuts, you know. He had a great match with Shawn Michaels in WWE. I was a fan of that Intercontinental Championship match. Nice guy.
Man. I don't hate that.
Yeah, I know. It's just funny anytime Slapnuts gets brought up, I'm expecting the Pokemon Game Boy to show up on screen, but we're not in your territory at the moment, so I don't have the budget for that. When it comes to, I know you mentioned immediately the downfall. What was the one that made you feel just the best as a TNA fan? Was it the Angle and Anderson match, as you say, or was it another moment?
James Storm winning the title was big to me as well. I was a massive fan of the Cowboy. I kind of resonated with his gimmick in a way, because he's kind of a redneck, isn't he? And, well, he is a redneck. And I'm from a part of England which is, I guess, comparable.
Yeah.
Where, you know, there's not many cities, we're all country boys around here, and, you know, we all like to drink and have a time. And I really found myself looking up to Storm at the time. So when someone like him could win the world title completely out of the blue, that was an absolutely massive moment for me. Of course, that was also followed by a massive low as well, with him never in the title again.
But I do agree, and I think if there's one wrestler that did justice to the super kick, I definitely give it to James Storm. They really did protect that finisher for the time that, you know, he was on top. So I really respect that, and great cowboy hat. I actually very big on James Storm when I've, you know, caught bits and pieces of that TNA period where they were really competing as the second company. So good on them. Recently, I mean, as soon as of last year, you've kind of been pulling away from only doing TNA videos, right? You've been trying to talk about more modern wrestlers and even dabbling in some WWE, AEW content. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to say that. Was there a specific reason why you finally said, hey, let's start, you know, talking about the bigger companies and, you know, switching it up a little bit? Or did you just kind of, it's just like a natural progression of your channel, like a natural evolution?
Yeah, natural evolution. I mean, I was an Attitude Era fan, so I was watching WWE at one point. I did completely fall out of the loop, and I didn't watch any of it for a very long period. So in a way, it's cool for me to go back and watch. Well, not go back, to actually go and watch this stuff for the first time and see what everyone was making a fuss about.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like you have to keep expanding. If I just focused on TNA solely, you know, my channel would be dead in the water, because there's only it's a relatively new company in terms of, compared to WWE at least. There's only so much stuff out there to talk about.
For sure. And I mean, you were even at AEW All In with their record-setting attendance.
I had to say to myself, was I for a second?
I loved your live reaction to it. I thought that was super cool to be able to see what that was like being in the arena at the time. Even if the numbers, someone might have fudged them up a little bit. Not exactly record-setting, as I said. It's fine. The only person that's really taking the most damage for that is Will Ospreay. But hopefully he gets that tattoo cleared up a little bit. Looking back on it now, did it live up to the hype for you?
Nah.
Well,
I wasn't an AEW fan in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm not somebody who hates on the company, but I was only watching for a month before I went to that show.
Fair.
So I wasn't invested in the product. So other than Samoa Joe versus Punk and MJF versus Adam Cole, I really had zero interest in the rest of the show, and I was going for the atmosphere and to see live wrestling and be a part of that record-setting crowd as we've come to know it.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was bad. I mean, I was here with two lads, I guy and Herman guy who won competitions.
Yeah.
So at the same time, I was sort of having to look after them in a way, because they're both quite young and they were both in a foreign country to them.
Yeah.
So I wasn't solely focused on the show, and at the same time, I was trying to make a video at the end of the day.
True.
And I was downstairs filming people when I should have been watching the matches. So it's my own fault if it didn't seem as good a show to me.
Cool. I mean, were you at least kind of a fan of the Jericho and Ospreay match? I know some people maybe don't love Chris Jericho at the moment, but they thought that match was pretty good.
I didn't watch it.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember. The problem is I was drinking as well. I hadn't drank in about 3 years, and that AEW All In was the first time I was drinking, and it got a bit out of control. I remember only one person recognized me the entire show. This guy came up to me and said, "Oh, Markyd." And I was actually wasted at this point. I just grabbed him, gave him a kiss on his bald head, and he kind of walked away looking a bit like, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But, I'm sorry if you're watching, dude, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I didn't come to respect Ospreay until I saw him at the TNA event, and you'll probably talk about that later. But yeah, I didn't really watch the Ospreay match.
Hey, totally fair. I mean, I'm still not his biggest fan per se, but I do think that as of late, and I have to watch his Okada match, which I haven't yet, which I heard was fantastic. I think he definitely has the stuff for sure. It's just a matter of what, like, I think you and I can agree on this, what story is being told throughout the match that he has with a specific person. I think when you put him up against someone like Okada, or even if they put him up against a Bryan Danielson, there's more of a reason to be invested in what's going on.
I think he just has it, and it's really hard to define.
Yeah.
But he's got something in him that seems to unite the fans and make them care about him. And you can't teach that.
1000% I agree. Have to agree with that. Well, now, since we've actually been discussing a more new generation wrestler and a style that's kind of been labeled as controversial by older heads of, wrestling, some of the gatekeepers think too much flippy stuff going on. I reference back to the Bret Hart video in WCW. What happened to wrestling? Not my best Bret Hart impression, but I think you get the gist of it. You've been a fan of pro wrestling for a while, and definitely during one of its biggest boom periods, and all the way now to the current day. So I need to know, what is your perspective on the sentiment that this younger crop of talent puts more emphasis on, the wow factor of pro wrestling with high spots and death-defying stunts, and less on building a story and honing in on psychology.
It isn't their fault. It's the booker's fault.
Okay.
Perfect Balance was before the 2010s. They deserved their spot on the show. But that's all it should be. You should have one flippy match per show, and I'm absolutely cool with that. It doesn't matter if it doesn't tell a story. Just let go, do amazing stuff, but then move on to something completely different. The problem isn't their athleticism. Like, wow, I couldn't do half the stuff they do.
Yeah.
The problem is they're so athletic that it's discouraging people, larger wrestlers, from getting into the industry in the first place. You know, if I'm a kid sat at home, if I'm a 6-foot kid sat at home, I'm watching this stuff and I'm thinking I could never do that, so I'm never going to learn to do it in the first place. And that's probably why there's less tall wrestlers nowadays. I think that's ultimately the problem. No one can keep up with them. And it has to end somewhere, right? I mean, there's only so much athleticism someone can do. I mean, look at the stuff Vikingo's doing now. I mean, it's almost incomprehensible how you can even pull that stuff off.
Yeah.
But how do you top that? Where is the line drawn? And I feel like we're just about reaching that point now of what the human body is even capable of. And are people going to be bored, you know, if we're not bettering these crazy spots?
I've never heard that perspective before. First of all, I agree on the sense of eventually there will be no like other ceiling to cross or just go over, and you're gonna reach the ultimate ceiling. But I also didn't think about it in the sense of there's a lot of other styles of wrestlers, or different body types of wrestlers, like larger wrestlers, who feel like they can't compete with these more athletic guys because they can't fit that style. And I never even thought about it from that angle. And I do think you're right on that as well. I mean, we look at TNA, how they have their champion. I mean, they have the belt on Moose. I think a wrestler like Moose might be right now very rare in a company, being like the top guy, because a lot of times you will have them wanting to put emphasis on someone who can do, I guess, a little bit more acrobatic spots than a build like Moose as a wrestler.
I mean, even the big guys they have doing crazy stuff. You know, Moose is actually really athletic. He didn't do any of that hard to kill, but he can run up to the top rope and do stuff.
Yeah.
That a lot of people his size couldn't do. Most people that size doing that sort of thing is a rarity. I don't know I don't really watch too much WWE lately, but I assume their bigger wrestlers are all capable of doing some crazy stuff. I mean, Drew Galloway's not really. He doesn't do anything too crazy, does he? He's all power moves, I think.
True, but
yeah, I don't know it enough to comment.
Well, a while ago, I don't know if he still does the move anymore, but he would come and hit a top Conhilo every once in a while. I remember a big spot with Bobby Lashley in WrestleMania 30. It was 37. In the opening match, he did a top Conhilo. I don't know if he still does it anymore. Actually, from the matches I've seen on Raw, he never does anything like that anymore. But to say that, yes, they've had to evolve, 1,000%. I mean, Drew Galloway being his size and of his stature, to have to learn that move and then go ahead and do it, it's an anomaly. Definitely an anomaly. I want to ask you an even deeper question into that question. It's a little bit layered here. More specifically, in what ways do you believe pro wrestling has progressed and, by contrast, regressed?
Women's wrestling has progressed insanely. I'm blown away by what they're even capable of nowadays.
Exactly.
I started making a Ring of the Hawk video on... Who was it? I don't know. I've not even released it yet. It was... I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's a modern women's wrestler. And I was blown away by just how much they're capable of. But not just that. They don't wrestle anymore like they've got 2 left feet. Yeah. These girls can do it flawlessly, and their opponent can do it flawlessly, and they match up so well. And you compare that to the Attitude Era, where even if they did a crossbody, that was considered a big move back then.
Yeah.
And I think that's great that women can be that athletic now. But then in terms of regression, it's storylines, dude. I think that's part of the reason I don't get invested as much anymore. There's really the hype on storylines, and instead there's constant batterings of video packages and advertisements and promotions for things when they should be spending that time on storylines. And wrestling's meant to be like a soap opera. That's what I was always taught to believe. And it's not any soap opera I could imagine the casual fan watching anymore.
Got it. I mean, speaking of that, I know you did an interview with Vince Russo recently. And, well, first of all, I want to ask, does he actually say, I don't remember exactly, but did you catch a lot of bros in his vocabulary when you did interview him?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not overstated. He does end every sentence with the word bro.
With the word bro, okay. Got it. So at least we have confirmation on that. And I know he mentioned that he doesn't really, in your interviews and in other ones afterwards, that he doesn't necessarily he doesn't really watch a lot of the programming now at all because he believes that they don't follow the format that he sort of revolutionized, which is you have promo to start, then, a couple more, or like a 10-minute match, then you have a promo, and then and then those promos at the beginning build up that last match, and then that match ends with some sort of storyline, like a revelation or something that they can use to go into the next show the week after, or going into the pay-per-view. And you believe that that's just not there anymore exactly. Like, as someone who, I will say that I do love that there's more wrestling on these shows. I do also agree that, yes, if you look at, and I don't mean to single a specific company out, but AEW, for example, sometimes they'll have certain pay-per-view cards where it does feel like it's a match there just to be a match. Just so we can have something for people to see without them necessarily being super invested in what's going on.
Yeah, I can't comment on AEW because I haven't watched the show since Wembley, so
okay.
No offense to them. But the issue is the content of the storylines that are happening is just boring. Okay. There's no creativity. No one's thinking out the box. No one's taking any risks. There's nothing that makes you sit up and go, what on earth is happening? Like, in a good way. It's just, we're fighting because I want your belt. And then maybe some nonsense thrown in like, oh, I beat you last time. And, it's nothing. There's no sort of romance in any of these angles. There's no sort of craziness going on. I'm probably, I grew up during the Attitude Era, I probably think too much back to those times.
Yeah.
But for me, I cannot watch a 30-minute match. I refuse to do it. I don't want to watch a 30-minute match. And that'll probably upset you, my friend, but wrestling's all about opinions, and I'm not going to hate on anyone who wants to. I'm glad everyone's enjoying the show, but personally, I just can't sit for a 30-minute match anymore. It's not. There's not enough there to keep my interest.
Hey, the duality of man. I will take a 1-hour Iron Man match. My favorite match last year was MJF versus Bryan Danielson. But then again, I do look at what you're saying, and there are elements of what you're saying in that match where you do have you have to use the 60 minutes wisely. You do have the build up, and then you have spots that just reinforce where they stand in the storyline, with MJF being, the cowardly heel kind of, who will do anything to win, and Danielson just being so insane and addicted to violence that he doesn't care necessarily whether he wins or loses. He just wants to inflict punishment on MJF. So, a match like that, I love it for it being a pure wrestling, technical wrestling showcase, and also for how good it is at telling a story on the canvas.
Well, if you take MJF out of that equation and switch him with some random villain or midget, are you going to enjoy that match as much?
No comment.
It's because MJF's so awesome. That's why you love him. He kept your interest for an hour with his antics, and the fact that if he's a heel, you want to see him get battered, and if he's a face, you want to see him succeed doing crazy shtick. It's all about the wrestler being over with the fans and being a personality.
I can't deny that, and I think we can both agree that when it comes to wrestlers that you would want to bet on that guy and say that he's the future of the industry, MJF is 1000% one of those guys. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that there are any other wrestlers that you would kind of, aside from MJF, that you would want to either see be propped up more or have absolute faith that they will, take that baton from the previous generation and make sure wrestling stays at the top where it is in terms of, being in the public eye, selling out arenas, and also just being the face of a company and doing it well? Of any company.
Yeah, that's tough. I hope my boy Hammerstone does well. I mean, I think he has potential to offer something a little bit different in today's environment. I mean, the dude looks legit scary. There's not many people who look as good as him, yet he can wrestle really well.
Yeah.
And he can talk really well.
Yeah.
So I hope I don't know if he's going to go as far as an MJF. I mean, MJF is another person who just has that magical thing,
Yeah.
I'd also like to see Jacob Fatu do well because he's real.
Yeah.
If I saw him in a match, I could buy an angle that he legitimately wants to kill his opponent.
Yeah. Good way of putting it.
That's why it's a shame he's wasn't part of the whole bloodline thing. It would have made it so much better.
True. I know a lot of people argue that, if they were to continue the bloodline storyline, that they'd rather have Jacob Fatu as a main guy over, say, Solo. Even though I really do still like Solo, I think Jacob has more of that intimidation factor that maybe the booking when it comes to Solo is just kind of lacking.
Yeah, I like Solo too. I mean, I like all the Samoan wrestlers. They're cool, but Jacob as an enforcer is a lot more believable.
I agree.
He should be in the spot that Solo's in, but his life choices have altered that, and that's on him, I guess, at the end.
Yeah. You've already made it apparent from this interview and from just your channel in general that you're a straight shooter, and you're proud of it. You like to tell it how it is, and while, again, talking to you right now, it's an honor. You're not afraid to say how you feel, and people's opinions of you alter from what you're saying, or maybe people look at you and you might turn a fan away or gain a fan because you know that you just want people to want to watch you and be entertained by you from just how you are 100% down to the wire as a person. And recently, I know we talked about this a little bit off camera, but you did do that CM Punk's first AEW run on your Ring of the Hawk episode. And I'm not just bringing this up because I know CM Punk might get some views for me, but hey, just for real, because I noticed how that was a very sort of controversial Ring of the Hawk episode that you released at the time. And I just want to know and sort of get your thought process on how it's like for you when you analyze a wrestler's run in a company. What are you looking for that will stand out and make you a fan, and what are things that become pet peeves as you're reviewing these matches?
Yeah, it's always harder for me to sit through an entire run for a modern run because the style is so different now to what I'm used to.
Got it.
And I do have to then sit through those 30-minute matches, and I have to try and look past that and say to myself, you can't grade someone down just because they're doing the right style, and that's what appeals nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's a real challenge for me to try and get on board with that. And that damn CM Punk video, man. Oh, it's one of the few times I've had legitimately been sent death threats because of my views on the channel. And
oh my God.
Honestly, I don't even think what was that bad on that video.
No, I think it wasn't.
1,000 times worse.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I was so shocked because, if you compare that CM Punk Ring of the Hawk to, let's say, what's one that you might have done before on, let's say, I don't know, a Goldust, a really big Goldust fan, and you do his Ring of the Hawk on when he was in TNA, where you, the run was awful, but you really, which is not his fault necessarily, but you really rip into that. And I can see maybe a more of an Attitude Era fan or some fan from that time really hate that because of the fact that you gave that run, no love. Or maybe another run of a wrestler that you did that maybe it's not coming to my mind right now, that you were a lot more negative. But the CM Punk Ring of the Hawk, you gave him, first of all, you gave him a lot of good like ratings on whether it was a match that some people weren't expecting, like I mentioned before when we talked the Lee Moriarty match, or sure, you're not giving an A+ rating to like what'd you give the MJF match, the dog collar match? I think you still gave that one an A, pretty sure, or a B.
Maybe a B, and that was the main target of hate. People.
Oh, so that was the one. Yeah, exactly. But a B is like, come on. You know what I mean? I think what irks me about that, and why I still give you immense respect for just being so determined to say, this is how I feel, like, that's it. You can't hate me for my opinion about, like, a wrestling match, is, again, what's wrong with someone watching a match that everyone else loves and just going, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. But I didn't love it. Like, that's it. You're not even trying to purposefully be a contrarian and say, awful match, hated it, CM Punk is washed, MJF's overrated. You were just, if you listen to your commentary during that match, it was very simple and very to the point of what you liked, what you didn't like, and then you just gave it its rating and you said you liked it. So I was pretty shocked by that at the time.
That's why I've kind of, in a way, I've shied away from AEW content, because it's not worth my time. I'm already doing something I don't really want to do. I don't want to sit for a 30-minute dog collar match. I'm sorry, I absolutely hate dog collar matches.
They're not my favorite either, to be fair.
Yeah. I've spent my entire day watching this stuff just for someone to send me death threats over something I said on that video.
Yeah.
No, I'd rather just not bother reviewing AEW stuff.
Yeah. And especially after that, when I completely understand. That's insane. Speaking of your opinions on previous matches or wrestlers that you might have, had your 2 cents to say about, are there any opinions you've made clear in your past videos that have gradually changed since then, possibly? Whether for better or for worse, Maybe ones that you felt were too harsh at the time and you wanted to say, well, maybe I shouldn't have gone as hard as I did on that specific wrestler or match, or ones that you might believe are too forgiving.
I'm a man who likes to stick to my word, and had an opinion 5 years ago. You just have to accept it was my opinion 5 years ago, and things might have changed.
Maybe you like the Patriot matches a lot more than you remember.
What did I rate him? I don't
actually.
I don't remember.
I'm kind of joking a little bit because you actually did give him a higher rating than I would have expected. But I don't know. I was more so saying that maybe there was that wrestler that you either loved it more than you thought you would have, but then now you kind of are sour on it, or maybe you appreciate more now that you've seen more of them.
No, not really. I mean, the reason I can't really answer that is because I don't watch wrestling shows each week
that
are up to date. So my opinion can't really change unless I go back and watch one of my old videos and I think, oh, actually, that was a bit rubbish. No, fair. I stand by all my grades, every single one.
Yeah. Well, that's totally fair. I mean, listen, again, as I mentioned before, you're pretty straight shooter. You know exactly what you're going to say and how you feel about something after you watch it. And that's something that even myself, where I look at when I see certain things, when I, talk about film or music, and then afterwards I'm always a little bit worried. There's that nagging voice in my head that says, what if you do change your opinion on this later down the line? And I think as a reviewer or critic, you're always worried about that because it's like an unspoken rule that you're never allowed to change your opinion on something in mainstream media, because then you either get called, oh, so you were just doing it because it was a popular thing to say at the time, or I actually have no idea what I'm talking about, which might also be true, but at least I thought I was doing a better job of hiding it.
Well, I will say, when I was doing that, I was doing a weekly review series, the Idiot series. I did watch Modern Wrestling, and I thought Ricky Starks was absolute garbage. I thought he was a vanilla midget, as worthless as they come. I didn't understand why he was being pushed on the show.
Yeah.
But it turns out I was obviously just watching a bad episode of AEW where he didn't do much.
Yeah.
Because that NWA video I just did, I've got a new appreciation for the man. So there you go. That's someone who my opinion has changed on.
Let's go.
He is good.
We got one. We got one out of the Hawk. I mean, I agree.
Yep.
I actually believe that when it comes to guys that I think that can do it all, and if they were just given the proper time to do those things, Ricky Starks is number one on my list. I really do believe so. Right now, he's not necessarily doing anything super interesting. I think he's on the tag team like storyline in AEW, but they're not getting the attention that I believe that he deserves as a wrestler. So I agree. I really do agree on that one. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Impact has recently changed back to the glory days. They want to pull that back from the casket that they just drilled into the ground, and TNA's back. It has risen from the dead. You did a review recently on Hard to Kill, and you thoroughly enjoyed that pay-per-view. You're excited about what's to come for the company. In your opinion, what do you believe they have to do right out of the gate, and what are things they should definitely avoid?
It's difficult because I don't know what their budget is. It seems like there's a lot of blurred lines at the moment on if they have money or if they don't have money.
Yeah.
I mean, there's rumors going around that they had the money to get Ospreay in, isn't there?
Yeah.
But again, that's just someone's word. Did someone in the company officially say we almost signed Will Ospreay? I don't know. It was dirt sheet, wasn't it? As far as I know.
Yeah.
So without knowing their budget, it's hard to know what they should do. I mean, if I was in control, I'd fire a bunch of people. I know that much. But as far as I'm aware, they are working on a budget. They are needing to hire talent who are Canada-based. So they can't go firing a bunch of people. So they have to work with what they've got. People who are willing to work for less money and live in Canada. They need to get the storylines going, man. That's what they need to do. When I watched Impact last year, and I think I caught maybe 10 episodes and 3 or 4 pay-per-views, and it was the same complaint every time. Lack of star power, everyone looking like they were dirty, like unwashed indie geeks.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like I was watching a professional program.
Yeah.
That's the biggest sin. If you're on TV, you need to act like you're on TV.
Yeah.
And just no storylines whatsoever. Again, we've touched on it earlier, but the storytelling on Impact was the worst out of any show I was watching last year.
Yeah, you did make that clear in your videos, and can't say it's too hard to argue against that. Or it's pretty difficult.
Get rid of Jonathan Gresham. I can't stand that guy.
But then again, that's where we have to disagree. I think he's so great in the ring, but I understand that maybe being the top guy, you just don't necessarily agree with that one.
His talking about wrestling styles, I can accept all the flippy stuff.
Yeah,
that's fine. Like that, if I see Vikingo do a crazy dive off the ropes, I'm like, wow, that's cool. If I watch Jonathan Gresham doing all these choreographed holds and trying to take out 3 people at the same time, it's just absolutely ridiculous to watch. And the stuff he tries to do, it seems to take about 20 seconds to set up, whilst the opponent has to stay completely still whilst he puts some weird lock on them. And I'm just watching this, like, for God's sake, punch him in the gut. Like, if this was a real fight.
Where's the brick? Where's the brick?
It's just, I can suspend my disbelief wrestling is fake.
Yeah.
But can we at least try and look slightly realistic here?
That's a fair point. I guess it's just I really did enjoy his work in Ring of Honor, so that's probably why I'm a little high on him as compared to you and maybe others. But I see your points. I see you're making a valid observation there.
He's not the biggest. Like, there's other people on the show I'd get rid of as well. Like, I don't want to be. I mean, at least he looks. He's obviously very jacked.
Yeah.
So, and he's got that mask thing going on. He probably should be on TV. There's definitely worse offenders in that category.
Yeah.
I just don't personally like his style.
Fair. And when it comes to where you see them down the line, if everything goes according to plan, and I know you don't watch too much of AEW, you're not necessarily the biggest AEW fan, but do you think there is a chance that TNA again becomes that second option like how it used to be back in the late 2000s?
No, zero. There's zero chance that TNA is going to take over AEW, and that's for a couple of reasons. So the TV network is appalling.
Yeah.
There's not enough fans in the US who can watch TNA.
Yeah.
And everyone would say, "Oh, go look at them on their YouTube channel or whatever." But a casual viewer doesn't want to do that. A casual viewer doesn't want to go looking for them. They just want to turn the TV on. Oh, it's TNA. Let's sit and watch that. So that's their biggest problem. That damn TV network is rubbish.
Yeah.
They used to have a really big following in the UK as well because they were on a free TV in the UK. So literally anybody had a TV could watch them.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what channel they're on over here anymore. So that might need to be something to get sorted out.
Yeah.
The other issue is I personally don't think they've got any money. That their network, who owns them, might be rich, but I don't think they're investing any money.
Okay.
I speak to TNA wrestlers regularly, and the inside word of people who've left the company have said they seem to be really struggling for money behind the scenes. And it doesn't feel like a company that's about to succeed much. They've clearly put a little bit of money into it for the rebranding, but is that all it's going to be? I don't think just signing Dolph Ziggler is going to be enough, unfortunately, because once he has the fight with Moose, I don't know if there's any matches I'd even want to see. So that roster's still far too weak to be anything. AEW's roster would destroy them.
Well, there's one guy they could sign to really save the company again. Big Papa Pump, the Purple Warrior.
I stand by what I said a couple of years ago. Someone needs to hire Steiner as an authority figure.
Yeah, that is.
Why not?
I don't know why no one has done it yet. Actually, that is the perfect authority figure. I mean, when he was, sort of winding down as a wrestler in TNA, even when he was there from the beginning, he worked best as just a personality on TV. You know, his exchanges with Bubba Ray Dudley I loved, you brought this up in the Hogan video, but I loved the way he spoke to Foley when Foley went to him and asked him, "Hey, like, what do you know about Hulk Hogan? Like, should I trust him?" And he just says, like, it's just like he's still hilarious, but he has these moments where he's trying to be serious, and he goes, "You can't trust that guy. You know, don't turn your back against that guy." And for a second, I'm like, I believe him wholeheartedly in the way he was, like, giving off those lines. And obviously you can't deny the classic where he was the ring announcer for that one showing of TNA, and he introduced Samoa Joe hailing from Dunkin' Donuts, and that whole thing he was doing where he was...
I must have watched that episode of TNA at least 4 times.
Yeah,
it always comes up at work.
Yeah, it's perfect heel work, and as an authority figure right now, I don't think there's anyone, even as much... First of all, I love Nick Aldis on SmackDown right now. I think he's a pretty great general manager before he wrestles, because that's inevitable. I think he's doing great there. But there's no one that intimidating, yet also just absurd. And that's because Scott Steiner is a 1 in a million guy when it comes to being in the ring. There's very few guys who can radically transform themselves from being, the frat varsity guy on the Steiner Brothers to becoming the Purple Warrior, Big Papa Pump. Like, it's unheard of. I don't think there's any other wrestler that was able to pull that off in that way. At least for me. And I think hopefully you could agree on that, I'm sure.
He's a content goldmine.
He is a content goldmine.
Pretty much any era of Scott Steiner, and he's doing something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, his finisher, the Steiner Screwdriver, is... I think the only other person that does that is Brian Cage, and that's because Brian Cage has the facilities to pull that move off. You know what I mean? But that finisher is deadly. Oh my god. Wow. And that's, again, speaking of moves like that, if there's one thing I will agree with you, we got to start protecting finishers again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Look, I'll tell you right now, I enjoy all forms of wrestling and essentially every company. I don't watch that much NWA, but I know they have some talented people over there. I watch NXT, I watch Raw, SmackDown. I haven't caught the full Hard to Kill pay-per-view, but thanks to your video, I did like what I saw. But I remember I was watching an NXT match recently where this is my favorite move in wrestling. It was Angel Garza. He does a picture-perfect butterfly pile driver. To me, that is the most devastating-looking move in wrestling. And it was a 2 count. Yeah. It was a 2 count. And I was shocked at that. How, just in storyline perspective, but just the way it looked, that man is dead. The guy he did that move on, I'm sorry I can't recall his name, he looked like he was put in a coma after that move, and they still kicked out of it. I was a little ticked off about that. I know if maybe you saw clips of the Ospreay and Omega match on AEW where Ospreay did the Tiger Driver 97 or 98, where he gets him in the butterfly suplex position, flips him for a power bomb, but then he just dropped him on his head, and that didn't end the match either. So that is one thing. If there's one thing I will say that wrestling has regressed a bit, and I don't want to say that because I love the sport. We got to start protecting finishers again. We really do. That is one of the most important things about a match for me.
If someone's going to kick out your finisher, is it even a finisher?
And there you go. And that observation's. I always look back to really early 90s WWF matches, and even a lot of even though it kind of started in the Attitude Era, the whole the last 10 minutes you have a lot of finishers being used. But look at the Perfect Plex. That move was protected for a super long time. And once Bret Hart finally, yeah, and it's just a fisherman suplex. It looks great, but it just goes to show you that mentality has definitely shifted. And again, I'm not against finishers being used and kicked out of, but like we mentioned, there's always a line that must not be crossed. And sadly, I think it's been crossed countless times over the past couple of years.
Well, finishers used to be so protected that a lower carder or a mid carder could have a finisher on a main eventer, and that would be enough to beat the main eventer.
Yeah.
If you have a look at, I can't think of a better example than someone like Test, who's definitely a mid carder. I love Test, but he is a mid carder. That big boot was protected extremely well, and I think I seen him beat the likes of Undertaker and Kane with one simple big boot. If he hit that move, you knew it was over.
Yeah.
And we need to go back to that sort of thing. If your finisher isn't finishing the match, it's not a finisher. We need to get back to that.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. And I know I'm not also not gonna be the guy that goes, oh, super kicks are done. Because I understand their purpose now, but again, I will always sort of miss that idea of someone lands a great I always look at that Adam Cole and Ricochet match on NXT, which I don't know if you've ever seen that clip where Ricochet does the flip like a moonsault and Adam Cole hits him perfectly on the chin, lands it. And I watched that match and that sequence. It was great, but I think it could have been even better if he just won the match after that sequence. That is a match-ending sequence, and I feel like that's the thing nowadays with certain booking is there's too many match-ending sequences, and then what is the match-ending sequence then? You can't keep baiting the audience with a finish, because eventually the audience is going to turn on, and it has happened already. I think certain matches, I remember a lot of people weren't a big fan of MJF versus Jay White, or most Roman Reigns matches, which I love the guy, but let's be honest, his booking post Cody Rhodes WrestleMania and even a little bit before, where what's going to happen. The opponent's going to get, like Sami Zayn, for example, look at his match. He's going to get his haluva kick. He's going to pin him. It looks like he's going to win. 2.99. Interference, messes that up. Spear, match ends. And then you just rinse and repeat till the end. So that's one thing I really hope. Who knows? Whoever brings it back. Maybe it's you. Or maybe it's me 10 years from now when I sneak into a WWE program and tell them, hey, let's get this figured out. I don't know.
You know what the problem is, don't you? And I stand by this. No, there is not enough actual wrestlers who are stars. I'm talking superstars.
Yeah.
Who are behind the scenes nowadays. Where are they? They've all earned their money and got out as quickly as they could. You know, we're learning lessons from people who were like lower carders, opening matches on the show. They are the wise heads behind the scene. So how are the new guys meant to know any better when they're learning from people who never were anything special in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I will agree with you. I mean, there are certain producers, though, that I do respect a lot that maybe were never the top guys. For example, I think Jamie Noble is a pretty great producer for WWE, in my opinion. I do like Jamie.
Yeah, he was solid on the lower card, but how can you possibly tell anyone how to be a star?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
I get it. And then that's where I do agree with you, where we do kind of need guys who were more on the upper echelon to lay down wisdom. But like you said, a lot of those guys, they don't necessarily come back to take those producer roles. Yeah, and that's...
But they used to. During the Attitude Era, they were backstage.
Yeah.
So what happened? But who's the biggest star who works backstage? I don't even know. I mean, they've got a lot of sort of cruiserweight guys backstage, haven't they? But have they got anyone who wrestled higher up the card? I legitimate. I mean, obviously Hunter and the Game are there, so you know that's the obvious red flag there. But you have to think that they're not laying out the matches, are they? They've got a lot of other responsibilities.
True.
So who's there putting all the matches together?
I know, and this is not like, this is for real. I think in terms of like a top guy in a company that works backstage, Abyss, maybe, because I know Abyss is in WWE, and Abyss for a period of time was, you know, world. I mean, he was TNA heavyweight champion for a little bit, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know, just you do.
Yeah. It's debatable if he was a star.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I guess he is a heavyweight guy working backstage.
So at least that's one.
He was involved in.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is with him, he was involved in so much stupid stuff. It's hard to know if his word is valid.
That's a good point too. Before we kind of close it off here, Mr. Markyd, I do want to ask an important question here. And it's not so much like a huge bombshell, but I do want to know your thoughts on this because it's so interesting to have seen this change that took place in a month. And I just want to ask this because it's so timely at the moment. How long do you think CM Punk will last in WWE?
Don't know, don't care.
Don't know, don't care.
That
could be your answer. That could be your answer if you really want to just...
I just find it all ridiculous. I don't care about all the drama.
Yeah.
It wouldn't last a second against anyone who was, anyone who was real.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous that he's causing so much behind the scenes when he is a draw in the wrestling bubble, but no one outside the wrestling bubble even knows who he is. So why are we wasting so much time on this? If he is bad a person as the dirt sheets would have you believe,
yeah,
just get rid of him. I hear that, I might be wrong, but I hear that WWE ratings are slightly up. Is that correct?
Yes.
With him on the show?
Yes. They are up. So that's one thing.
Yes. But we'll have to see if that continues because AEW got a bump when he
was on there too. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know enough about the guy. My personal feelings are that he's good, but he's not a 5-star main eventer. That's my opinion. I'm not going to change it. And I'll probably get debts for that again.
Don't
I'm
worry.
too old and ugly.
No, don't worry. I'll make sure that won't happen. I got a defense here of Men and Monkeys. We're gonna just block any of that. But to your point, sorry. I agree with you.
He'll last year.
I think I actually, when it comes to stuff like this, I'm an optimist, right? Because while he was getting booted off, I was like, how could he do this? No, he messed it up. Punker, come on. And then when I found out he was joining WWE, I said, come, bring him to the company. Because I think in a lot of ways, and it could be a little twisted to think like this, but if there's one thing I do sort of miss about older storylines or older rivalries in companies, is that, and I think you can agree with me, is that sort of soap opera aspect that blurs the lines between reality and fiction. And regardless of how I feel about the guy as a person, I mean, he brings that nature. I mean, well, not nature, that like idea of, wait a minute, could this be real? Could this animosity be real? And I think obviously when it comes to him, 50% of the time it is real, and other times it's not. But it's always captivating. So I was ecstatic. I saw him show up at Survivor Series live, and I have hope that he will stay for a while. But then again, it's that, that small percentage that can become, go from 25 to 50 to 75 if he has just one scuffle with someone backstage. So I hope he does stay.
I don't think he can push his luck as much backstage in WWE. There's a lot of more real people backstage in WWE. He won't be able to get away with as much back there. And it's there's so many people around at all times that I don't think he pushes luck back there. And on that note, if Punk isn't a heel, I just don't want to see him. I don't see any value in him unless he's a heel. Great stuff if he's a heel. But after watching the Dynamite and the Collision runs, Collision run was just so much better to me in my head. Like, much more easy to get through. He's a natural heel.
It's true.
He's got the smarmiest face I've ever seen.
I agree. No, and if this is my prediction, I think he'll stay face up until that WrestleMania match that he'll inevitably have with Rollins. And there will be a turn there maybe, or afterwards, where he will turn heel. And if that's the case, that's like the heel you want with the belt on. Because he can have matches with whoever, and you'll just immediately want to root for the other person, whoever he goes up against. So that's my 2 cents. I really see where you're coming from in that the drama is eventually it becomes like you just become desensitized to it because of how much of it just washed. Like it was like a tidal wave of just bad thing after bad thing, and you just kind of go, well, that's come to be expected with him, I guess.
I just find it all a bit hard to care about. Like, I grew up in an environment where there was constant violence. People getting hit in the head with bottles.
Yeah.
Like drug dealing, fights at the pub every night, people, getting robbed and stuff. And it just all seems like Punk drama is so minor compared to stuff that I've seen.
Yeah.
That I just can't care about it. It all just seems really immature to me.
That's a general consensus that I think even the biggest, well, maybe not the biggest Punk fan, but even, a slightly, Punk fan like myself can say, I don't know how that just transpired the way it did. All it took was one meeting between him and the Elite, or someone to step in and say, hey, just figure this out. If you guys figure it out, we're going to make a lot of money. We're going to put on some great matches, but it just didn't end up happening. And I hope that doesn't repeat in WWE, because I'm very much looking forward to what he can accomplish in just a couple of months. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a good show of what happens when you let egos get out of control. And unfortunately, there were just too many egos involved in that situation.
Couldn't have said that better, honestly. Well, Mr. Markyd, just an absolute blast to have you here on No Banana Peels. But before we wrap this up, just give a little bit of, a rundown of things to come for your fans watching you. What do you have coming up that they should be looking out for, very excited for? I mean, to those watching, well, eventually when they watch this, they'll know you dropped your Ricky Starks Ring of the Hawk video in NWA. Are you going to be doing more of those as the weeks follow up, or are you going to be working on other things to release? Just, I'll give you the floor. Go right ahead.
I mean, the way I work is probably quite incomprehensible to some people, but I kind of wake up and I go, right, I'm doing this today. Like, nothing is pre-planned with me.
Okay.
Although I will say that we've got Sky Blue in NWA coming up. Because I had to download so much footage for the Ricky Starks, I thought I killed two eagles with one stone. We're not killing hawks, we're killing eagles. We'll kill 3 eagles with one stone.
Yeah.
And I will get all the matches for Sky Blue at the same time, because I didn't even know she was in NWA either. So, and she's quite, she's quite content worthy at the moment, isn't she? People like her. So why not? Let's do that.
Okay.
Other than that, the main thing I've got going on is Barood coming over from India.
Wow.
Some of you might not know who he is. I highly recommend you check my Ring of King video.
Yeah.
That's probably my best work, because there's just so much crazy stuff that you won't have seen going on there. Plus, Scott Steiner is a real treasure in that video. So
Yeah.
Definitely watch that. But basically, Barood is this guy who kind of became a bit of a cult hero on the channel at the time. And it's unfortunate that such time has passed since then. But it turned out that he'd wrestled a lot on TV. And WWE were doing NXT India, which still hasn't materialized. But Barood was actually having a tryout on NXT India. And they told the guy that he was too small, which I found a bit ridiculous, considering there's loads of small wrestlers on telly.
Yeah.
Plus, he's got charisma by the boatload, and he's just such a sympathetic babyface.
Yeah.
That I think he belongs on TV doing something. So the Shuv It Squad did do a fundraiser, and they raised $5,000 for him to come. Actually, it was pounds, which is more. But they've raised the money to come over. We've been tackling visa issues. He can't just walk straight into the UK, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's why so much time has passed. But it does seem like we're about to get the green light on that. So that when he sets foot here, that is going to be a big moment for myself, because I can actually do something meaningful with my life for a change and try and help this guy maybe get hired by AEW or WWE.
Yeah.
We're going to create a 10-part documentary. I'm going to get loads of people involved. We're going to tour England, maybe Scotland too, and we're going to film, document all his process. We're going to talk storylines. We're going to have fun. We're going to see him throughout the day and go through everything he has to struggle through in order to try and make it as this wrestler. And it's something that has been driving me for the last year or two. It's kind of something I've been holding on to. When things get dark for me on the channel, I'm like, okay, I've got this still. I'm looking forward to this. So I'm really happy about that. If he doesn't get hired by anyone, so be it. But I can say I tried. And it's more than a lot of wrestling channels have ever done. It's something unique. And it's something that's been completely organically funded by the viewers to make a potential wrestler's dreams come true. Someone who does deserve his shot. So shout out everyone who donated, because if I can pull this off, put all of this together, it's going to be life-changing for him, I hope.
Incredible.
As you can tell, I'm quite passionate about it.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, I'm beyond excited to see that unfold, and I have, without a doubt, faith that that's gonna happen. I mean, come on, you have the Hawk, you have him there with you. The stars are aligning in a way that it's almost destiny. I'm calling it now. And also, I want to mention, your Shuv It Squad fans and members think the channel itself is super meaningful. So don't think that isn't enough as well for us. We really appreciate that too. So come on, give yourself at least a small pat on the back, Mr. Markyd, with those, cannons for arms that you got going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like everyone's a YouTuber nowadays, though, doesn't it? And wrestling content is completely oversaturated now.
Yeah.
So to be able to stand out from anyone is really awesome. So thank you guys. But the Barood thing means a lot to me personally, because it's something that, as I said, no one's done, and I can actually give something back. And he started out as a guy that we made fun of as well. Let's not forget that. When
Yeah.
he first started showing up on the channel, we ripped him to shreds.
Yeah.
Now we're here trying to get him to AEW or WWE, and it might not happen, but it would mean so much, wouldn't it, if we could just make that go ahead.
I couldn't agree more on that. I like I said before, I definitely see it happening. I really do. Well, thank you so much for your time again, Mr. Markyd. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to be a part of this conversation. Loved it. We really showed everyone out there that the wrestling community is in good hands, because what we have up here in terms of knowledge, never been seen before. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but, you know, come on. We got this in the bag, and
that's the main thing. We need more unity in the wrestling business, because the wrestling bubble is toxic, no matter what side of the coin you're on. Wrestling works best when we're all just having fun. So who cares what style you like?
Yeah.
I'm in the minority, at least in the wrestling bubble. Not many people agree with me, but most of my audience do appreciate my take, because I've got a more mature audience who can accept differing opinions.
Yeah.
And differing opinions exist. But let's just stop all the petty rubbish of WWE fans and AEW fans going at each other. The two shows are pretty similar, in my opinion, so who cares?
A fitting final couple of words from the Hawk himself. And he'll smack you with the brick if you don't agree with him. But he'll do it politely. Thank you very much for watching. Again, thank you, Mr. Markyd. And see you guys in the next one. Peace.